I thought I'd start off today saying thank you to Barbara because this was the second sermon title that I gave for this week. Things changed. So give you a little idea of what goes through my mind when I look at the scriptures. Borderlands. Is this where we live? You know, these are all thoughts that came through my mind. A skin disease that looks like death. So are we dead without God? Okay. Are we in the borderlands between life and death? Are we dead corpses walking around? Are we living in an in-between state like zombies? It even gets worse after that. I start going into living dead. But when you're preparing things, a lot of different things come through your mind. And things about like foreigners. Are we all foreigners? Or do we think of others as foreigners? How does God think of us? Is there a change more than skin deep? Healing took place as they went along. And why doesn't Jesus say, "Come back and thank me"? So a lot of different thoughts go through your mind as you look at the passage and then see how the Spirit develops you. I found a story. There is an ancient legend about two angels who flew to earth to gather people's prayers. Wherever people bowed in prayer, by the bedside at night, or in a chapel, or in the side of a mountain, the angels stopped and gathered the prayers into their baskets. And before long, the basket carried by one of the angels grew heavy with the weight of what that angel had collected. But the other remained empty, almost. Maybe you can guess why one basket was full and while the other remained almost empty. Into the first basket were put prayers of petition. Please give me this. Please let me have that. Into the other prayer baskets were prayers that simply said, "Thank you." "Your basket seems very light," said one angel to the other. "Yes," replied the one who carried the basket containing the simple prayer, "Thank you." That angel added, "People are usually ready enough to pray for what they want, but very few remember to thank God when God grants their requests." Think on that for a minute. Wouldn't you agree that these two words have great meaning? And yet there's something within many of us that resists that simple act of saying and doing thank you. Consider for a moment this event in the life of Jesus. He was walking with his disciples along the border between Samaria and Galilee. They were entering a village when they came upon a band of lepers, 10 of them. It's amazing, isn't it, how mutual misery can cut across social, religious, and racial lines. We do not know if they were all Samaritans, or the rest were Jews, or they were mixed, or whatever. They had banded together for the society because they were kicked out of our society. And when you're hurting, like these lepers were hurting, you cannot afford our silly prejudices that affect us. Somehow when these lepers saw Jesus, they knew he could help them. Was it something in his appearance? Something about the way he carried himself? Maybe it was the expression of love on his face. One might expect that Jesus had even a greater air of authority than that. "Jesus, Master," the lepers cried out, "have mercy on us." How could Jesus deny their request? That's why he had come. His kingdom was not one of power and might, but one of loving service. We sometimes forget that, even in the church. And that giving, love, and service, along with worship, is our reason for being. Jesus' whole reason for being was to reach out to people, so when he encountered these lepers, he sought to minister to them. However, he took an unusual approach, which was his usual way. Instead of laying on hands and speaking a word of healing to them, he said, "Go show yourselves to the priest." Now, in the Old Testament, this was a requirement for being let back into society. And by way, leprosy in that, what we consider leprosy in the Bible, covers all skin diseases, not what we consider today. So even if you had a rash, you could be ostracized. But to be put back into society, you had to go show yourself to the priest. And they began their walk to show themselves to the temple priest, even before their healing was complete. This was faith on their part. So they did have faith. Remember that. They did have faith that they were being healed. So something marvelous happened as they were walking. They were healed during their journey, not before they started, and they were completed by the time they ended their journey. So think of this. Within moments, their wounds closed and disappeared, and they were suddenly just healed. No longer would they be outcast in their community. No longer would they be rejected even by their own families. They were clean. I can imagine them jumping up and down and shouting and even praising God. What a celebration that must have been. These men with decaying and disfigured bodies suddenly discovered that they had been made whole. I bet that they were surely delirious with joy. And yet only one of them came back to say thank you. And it is pointed out to us that this person was a Samaritan. And this was important, for Luke was written for the Gentiles, the non-Jewish people. It had meaning to them. It had meaning to them that this was a foreigner who came back to say thank you, not a Jewish person. That God is for everyone, not just Jewish people, even foreigners. Were not all 10 cleansed? Jesus asked. Where are the other 9? Has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner? And then he said to this grateful foreigner, rise and go, your faith has made you well. Jesus knew that these lepers were not completely healed until they had learned to say, thank you. Their bodies may have been made whole, but their hearts were still diseased. If they did not feel a profound sense of gratitude for what they had experienced. Yet they didn't feel that, possibly. But they didn't come back. No matter how stunning your physical appearance is, no matter how impressive your intellectual credentials, speaking again, no matter how grand your material success, you are still morally and spiritually inadequate if you have not learned to say thank you to others and to the one who is the source of all that we have. Saying thank you is a statement, first of all, to our character. Is there anything that makes us think less of a person than to bestow upon them the gift and never receive a simple thank you from them? I know ideally we shouldn't expect anything in exchange for that gift in return. However, everyone may feel gratitude, but we need to go to that trouble of expressing that gratitude. It says something about what kind of character we have, what type of person we are. And that's what disturbed Jesus. Those 9 men may have been jumping and shouting with their bodies, but that they were now whole and strong, but they still had a leprosy in their heart. There was still decay and disfigurement within them. Saying thank you is a statement, first of all, about our character. Saying thank you is also a statement of grace. Perhaps the greatest barrier to saying thank you for many of us is our pride. We don't like acknowledging our dependence on anybody, even God. We look at ourselves to be self-made people. We like to think that we have no one to thank but ourselves. And that is a leprosy. I'm convinced that this journey, that this primary derivement to joy is part of the problem here in church. How can we thank God for our deliverance from sin and death when we are convinced that we are pretty good people already who deserve everything that we have, everything that God has given us? Maybe we don't always see our sickness. So how can we thank our physician? John Newton felt that same impulse when God rescued him from guilt as his life as a slave trader. And that's why he wrote Amazing Grace. How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. It's a hymn of gratitude as well as praise. Let's face it, we are nice and decent people. And we are not slave traders, as he was. Still, if we could look deep into our heart of hearts, just maybe we also could see that there's still healing to be done there. If we could see ourselves as God sees ourselves in our incompleteness and imperfection, then we would cry out with joy that the Creator accepts us and loves us as we are. Saying thank you is a statement of character. It is a statement of grace. Saying thank you is a statement of worship. And that's why we are here today. That is why our hymns are all about. That's what our hymns are all about, and our offerings and our prayers and every part of our worship. Not only here today, but in the rest of our life. It is our humble way of saying thank you. That's why worship is not optional for us. It is what is being a Christian about. So we say thank you over and over and over again for healing us, for loving us and watching over us. That is a statement of our character and the reason for our worship. And it's the why we simply stand before God and say thank you, and thank you.